Welcome to Front Office Pros. The 2024 season will be here before you know it. So, Joe and I are here to give our predictions of what we expect round one to look like.
Hike!
Joe and I collectively came together and came up with this round one. So, Joe, who do we have for the 2024 101?
At the 101, we've got running back Christian McCaffrey, and even though you don't necessarily think he can repeat this performance, I still think this is where people are going to.
Whoa. You already, shots are already being fired before we even get going here.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
This is kind of Joe. The audience didn't need to know where I stood. Reality is we say he's won, so he's won.
Well,
You're letting the cat out of the bag.
I'm just giving people a little bit of what's going on under their hood here, Steve.
Oh boy, here we go. So what's not under the hood?
All right, what's not under the hood is obviously Christian McCaffrey. Was the best player this year. If you had him in over 50% of the leagues, was in the championships, and most likely if you had him, this guy won you the championship. So hard not to envision seeing this guy go number one overall.
Yeah, I think ADP wise, we thought that he was going to go one because of how important he was in the 2023 season. Like you had mentioned, a lot of people won their league single-handedly because of him. I have my personal doubts that he'll be able to repeat it, but we're trying to get rid of that bias. We're going to stick with him at the one. So who do we have at the 102?
At the 102, we've got wide receiver Tyreek Hill. And unfortunately, this guy wasn't able to hit the 2,000-yard mark, but he still was able to have 1,799 yards and 13 touchdowns on 171 targets. He is the clear number one option for the Miami Dolphins, and I don't see that much changing next year. So I think this guy will be the first wide receiver coming off the board.
Yeah, I think he really proved himself that he repeated it again. When he first came over to Kansas City, we had doubts, would he be able to do it? Then he did it with Tua. Then it was a question of, okay, well, is Tua healthy? Is he going to be able to sustain the whole season? Is Hill going to be able to repeat? He did. I thought Waddle was honestly a 1B to Tyreek Hill's 1A, but it was a clear separation between the two.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, injuries didn't help Waddle any. But aside from that, I mean, he's clearing away the one, and I would say Waddle's no longer the 1B. He's clearly the number 2 guy.
How about for number 3? What do we got for 103?
At the 103, we've got wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase. It was a close call, between him and Justin Jefferson. But like Ja'Marr Chase, edging him out there just because we know going forward, Ja'Marr Chase is, going to be with the Bengals, going to have Joe Burrow throwing him the ball. And T. Higgins could be on the move, so should be the Ja'Marr Chase show going forward. And obviously, we've seen what him and Burrow can do together. And, with one less target in that offense, he should be huge.
We would anticipate that both are going to be healthy heading into next season. Like you said, most likely reports indicate that T. Higgins will no longer be with the team. His target share, that's Chase's target share, could increase even more than it already is. I could see Chase being a guy who even could get into that 2 or 1 spot depending on the hype.
Yeah, I mean, even with Higgins, he's been averaging 135 targets. So you take Higgins away, I mean, I think we could see him closer to that Tyreek Hill number possibly.
I think so. So what do we got at the 104?
104, as I mentioned, we got wide receiver Justin Jefferson. And we got him here. I know there could be some concerns with depending on who the quarterback's going to be, but I don't think it'll really matter who the quarterback is. I think this guy is, pretty much quarterback proof, and he showed that this year. Still was a top 7 wide receiver despite missing some games, and playing with a lot of different quarterbacks as well.
Yeah, you and I had a little internal debate on this one. We kind of went back and forth. I am a little more.
You like the next guy better than him. And
I do. And I'm a little concerned about the not having a quarterback, but it's hard to say. I mean, I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to be back. Sounds like they may go with a rookie. And if that's the case, it's like, well, are you going to get CJ Stroud or are you going to get Bryce Young? I just don't know how it's going to shake out. That's the interesting part. So,
would Bryce Young have been better if he had a Justin Jefferson on his team? I mean, this guy's an elite one. And I mean, the best option that Young had to throw to was the 3 with the Vikings and Adam Thielen.
I mean, his name value is almost untouchable. So I think it makes sense for us to have him at 4. So who is this mysterious receiver at 5 that I like so much better?
Yeah, the mysterious wide receiver at 5 that you like so much better is CD Lamb. And there's no denying, I mean, towards the once his schedule got, easier, him and Dak, absolutely cooked. He had 135 targets, 1749, and 12 touchdowns on 181 targets. So, I mean, that those numbers are pretty impressive. I don't know. I feel like it's hard to trust this Dallas offense. I think things could potentially change, and I think Dak's a tough guy to trust. He excels in bad matchups, but then kind of goes away in the tougher matchups. And if they have a tougher schedule next year, that's why I don't necessarily like him as much.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Joe. The definitely the schedule could be a lot worse. I just think that we saw how important CD Lamb was to that offense. Dak targeted him a ton. And really, I find that Lamb, Jefferson, and Chase are all kind of in the same jumble. Really, it's just whoever you kind of like is your preference because they're all, getting the ball quite extensively.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's not much separating these guys. They all get hyper targeted. They get a decent amount of touchdowns. So it really is hard to go wrong with either. We're splitting hairs, honestly.
We really are. So who do we got at the 106?
106, we're going with running back Brees Hall. And once this guy was healthy, he really showed that breakout ability. Really like him heading into the 2024 season with the prospects, assuming that Aaron Rodgers is going to be healthy and playing, that should only elevate his stock.
I think in this whole 12, I think Brees Hall was the guy who you were most excited about. I think you had a little pep in his step when you were mentioning Brees Hall. And he has a pep in his step, to be real. I mean, he proved me wrong. He had a lot of explosion this season. You just saw he's got great acceleration. He could just, blow past people. And I think when it comes down to him, I was perceiving that Dalvin Cook was going to eat into his carry share. And I think probably Dalvin did too, because he demanded his release. I think that Brees Hall could really take over the show next year. So not only will he have the explosiveness that he does, but he could have even more opportunities and a much better offense that doesn't have Zach Wilson in the helm. So I think Brees Hall is going to do really, really well next year. So I'm definitely doing a 180 on him compared to last year.
Yeah. I mean, it really is his show. I don't know. I mean, there's not many guys. I don't see them bringing one in. It's not a very good running back draft class this year. They got Izzy Abanikanda. Yeah. So, I mean, it should be Brees Hall show.
How about for the 107, Joseph? What do we got?
107, we've got running back Bijan Robinson. And I think everyone's going to be excited. The mustache and Arthur Smith is out of the building in Atlanta. There's a new man in town, and I think the whole fantasy community is rejoicing and just praying that they will figure out how to use this guy and get him more involved.
It'll be really interesting when we learn and discover who the OC is for the job. Rumors have it it's going to be Zach Robinson from the Rams coming over with Raheem Morris. And that would be interesting because, as we remember, they relied pretty heavily on Kyren Williams. And it really was only Kyren Williams. They're really, I mean, sure, they used Royce Freeman sparingly, but when he was healthy, Kyren Williams was the running back. I think that Cordell Patterson is going to age out of that offense. I don't think he's going to be involved. Then you got Tyler Algier, but I don't think that – it's just going to be fascinating what happens with this Falcons offense because this Falcons offense has been, in my view, and most people's view, very underutilized. I mean, they've got some really talented players like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, guys that people are super excited about. So I'm very curious. I mean, if I was Zach Robinson, I'd be super excited because you have so many different chess pieces to work with.
Yeah, but in terms of Zach Robinson, though, he's the quarterback's coach and pass game coordinator, so it's not really like he decides how utilized Kyren Williams will be in the game. It wasn't the Rams OC, so not to say that he won't keep going with that one running back system. Just he could approach things differently.
That's a good point. So I guess that does change things, and that could so it's really a wild card to a degree of what's going to happen.
I think so. I mean, we haven't really seen this guy call plays before. Don't really know what his system or philosophy is, but it's got to be similar to McVay. I mean, he's part of that coaching tree now, so.
Well, I guess time's going to tell. He's going to be an interesting guy. Guys are going to want to be raising him up, as am I, because people had him even at the 101, possibly some people saying that you should draft him at the 101 this past season because of all the hype and buzz around him. So I assume it's going to happen again.
Damper on those plans pretty quickly.
He really did. So who do we got at the 108?
At the 108, I really like this guy. He's so underrated, and that's wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown. Guy's just an absolute beast. The number one target option in the Lions passing attack. And I personally think with how well Jared Goff has been doing, I think Jared Goff will be back as the quarterback for the Lions. And we've seen what these two can do. And I just think he continues to grow and excel in this Lions offense.
I expect more continuity in that offense. I think it's only going to get more crisp. There's only going to be more reps, I think, for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I wondered whether they'd start involving Jameson Williams in the offense. Really hasn't been involved at all. I don't think it really suits Jared Goff's strengths either, to be honest with you. I think, he's not the type of guy that I think is going to stretch the field and really utilize Jameson Williams' talents. If anything, I think he's kind of a decoy based on his speed. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is the guy going forward. Laporta should probably be healthy by training camp. I don't see how this offense is going to skip a beat. Now, the only thing is, I'm just thinking about this. Ben Johnson. Yeah, you and I just both, the light bulb went off together. We saw the effect that Shane Steichen had when he left Philadelphia. That offense just went through a mudslide. So could we see the same thing in Detroit now that I'm saying that out loud?
Could, but I just think having a guy, more of a veteran player in Jared Goff, I think he could figure things out and maybe not as be dependent on the offensive coordinator as Jalen Hurts is. He's a younger player.
But Jalen Hurts is a veteran too at that point. He already got a contract extension.
Younger guy and has less experience, and I don't know, him and Steichen really had a rapport. I know, Goff has been played for, multiple offensive coordinators, but Ben Johnson has really been able to get the most out of him. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see who they replace him with. There's a lot of interesting coordinator jobs out there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that could change things. That's something I would monitor for sure. How about
I don't know if it matters who's calling plays because I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is just that good.
All right, Joe. So what do you think? I know you want to get this. I know you want Amon-Ra St. Brown. So let's pump the brakes here. Let's go over to the 109. You're going to want this guy too. I know how you operate.
109. We're going with the new hotness at the wide receiver position, and that is Puka Nacua. This guy was just, great and really exploded this year as a rookie. And him and Stafford have a rapport. He's taken over there as the number one guy. He's exceeded Cooper Kupp at this point.
Super Cup. I like that. That's good.
That's what he used to be Super Cup, but not so much anymore. It's now Puka taking over those breakfast meetings with Stafford, and it really has shown with his explosiveness.
You're laying it on thick right now. What did you have for dinner tonight? Here's the thing. I'm with you though. Puka Nacua. I think it's interesting. Are people going to buy into the hype going into next season? Will he end up being this highly drafted? I know he had such a great year. I think he will. Could see him slip out of the first, but who knows? I could also see him going higher because you never know when people start thinking about because they want to say they want to be ahead of the curve as to who's going to be that guy. Could Puka even do better than what he did last season? It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the sophomore breakouts all the time. Even though he kind of already broke out as a rookie, is there still room for him to be even better next year?
So if you're in a draft in a league with Joe, just prepare for him to go for Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's going to be what his team consists of. But how about number 10? You seem to like this guy too. Maybe I spoke too soon.
Well, at number 10, there's wide receiver A.J. Brown. I know you're not as high on him, Steve, but I still think he
Going
deserves
under the hood again
to be into the top 12 here. Look, even as bad as the Philadelphia Eagles offense was, and Hurts had a somewhat of down year, he still found a way to get this guy the ball. He's such a high ceiling player, and he has the ability to go up and get the ball and be a red zone target as well. It's hard not to like AJ Brown. We'll see how much things.
You don't even like him. What are you talking about?
Oh, I don't like him as a person, but it's hard to deny his fantasy ability. Yes, he's a complete diva, and I think he really wrecked the Eagles' offense and wrecked Jalen Hurts this year. But he was still great for fantasy. So I can't deny that.
I would have personally left AJ Brown off the 12. I think that there are some serious concerns as to how he's affected that Eagles locker room and the coaching staff and Jalen Hurts. I mean, you even were telling me recently that AJ Brown said it's either me or Hurts. I mean, if it gets to that point, it could get really ugly pretty quickly. And then where does he go? You could say, well, it doesn't matter where he goes.
That's what I would say.
Okay, but there was a difference between what he did in Tennessee and what he did in Philly. He took it another notch up when he was in Philly. He was good. He wasn't great in Tennessee. So I have my reservations on the guy, but I think you're right. Other than the end of the year where he went in a complete tailspin, he was a guy who won you weeks because of how good he was. So to me, I think it makes sense why we have him in the top 12. So who do you got for the 111?
Yeah, 111, we got another wide receiver, and it's Garrett Wilson. A guy that I was disappointed with this past season. Really pegged him for a breakout, as many others did. But I think if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, this could be the breakout that we were looking for this year, just happening in the 2024 season. And, I feel like it's Garrett Wilson's wide receiver room, we'll see if they bring somebody in the offseason. But right now, he's the clear number one option in the offense that should be led by Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he was my guy for me for the 2023 season, where I fully expected him and Aaron Rodgers to have a really, really good season. Obviously, Rodgers got injured, the first quarter of the Bills game in week 1.
4 plays in.
Yeah, 4 plays in. So, we weren't going to see much of Garrett Wilson. So I'm with you on this. I just wonder, will he end up being in the top 12? Because I don't think he was in the top 12 from an ADP standpoint last season. You could argue the hype was just as high with Aaron Rodgers before that. So, would someone say, Travis Etienne or Devontae Adams or, someone of that nature that has been more accustomed to being in that top 12, would they possibly be in there instead? But we have seen some players like Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, probably those guys fall out of the top 12. Derrick Henry right now, we haven't talked about him yet. He's fallen out of the top 12. So there is kind of a shakeup here in this top 12 and this year compared to years prior.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, some of the aging veterans are out, and we got some new younger guys that are, on the way up in their careers, in here.
All right, so who do we got for our last pick in the first round, the 112?
Yeah, to round out the first round, we've got running back Jahmyr Gibbs. Pretty crazy, Steve. We got 2 Jets players and 2 Lions players. Who would have thought?
What world do we live in, Joe?
I know, the world we currently live in, but hard to deny Jahmyr Gibbs. Yes, he was disappointing for the first few weeks and didn't really turn it on until, week 7, where he finally got 60% of the workload and the opportunities, and that continued down the stretch of the season. But this guy just has the speed and quickness, and his agility and the moves that he has is really impressive. And I think it's interesting for him. I know you don't like this type of player because he's kind of got David Montgomery's kind of got that volume role, but Jahmyr Gibbs is just so electric. He doesn't need as many touches to give you fantasy points.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting how I assess Jahmyr Gibbs, because you're right. He's not that prototypical running back that I accustomedly look for. So I'm gonna have to really go back in the shop and figure out whether or not what I'm gonna do with him. But I am more open to that now, and I do think that because of how explosive he is, he will end up being in the top 12. And that was our top 12. I think it's interesting. One thing to note here, Joe, we only have 4 running backs. We did this based off of PPR. Is that surprising that we only have 4 running backs? In the round 1 expectation for ADP? That's probably pretty low, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, this is PPR, so that doesn't necessarily surprise me. I just think there's so many wide receivers, and I think we've seen, right, people that usually take running backs in the first round, they typically have been disappointing. And if you go wide receiver, it's been more advantageous for you. People have been going to the zero RB approach, and it's been working, as this is the passing league now. But I think there could be a shift, and it being that it's PPR, I'm not that surprised. Well, you seem surprised.
I am, just because, running back is everyone. I feel like in most drafts, people, at least maybe it's just the philosophy of fantasy football is changing, because it used to be very running back heavy, even in PPR leagues. You want to make sure that you have your running back and you fill out your roster with your receivers. Now it's like, oh no, I want a stud receiver. And that might just be because of how the running back landscape has changed. And a lot of these guys are aging out. So we'll have to see. We don't have guys like Kyren Williams. Maybe someone would say he's worthy of a top 12 pick. We don't have guys like Josh Jacobs. He's a free agent. Saquon Barkley, he's a free agent. That could also have something to do with it. There's a lot of these running backs that are out there. Austin Eckler, he's a free agent. There's a lot, and I don't think Eckler would be worthy of a top 12, but I'm just saying there's a lot of moving pieces. We just don't know where they're going to go and what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's true. Or at this point, I feel like it's safer to go with the wide receivers that we did. But to your point, I could definitely see a guy like Kyren Williams sneaking in there. The way that he just was an absolute stud, and like you said, Rams are just using him and him exclusively.
So that does it. We predicted the first round of the 2024 Fantasy Football Draft. It's never too early to do that for degenerates like Joe and I here. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode with Joe and I. We're going to be having episodes every week. We try to do 3 a week. You're not going to want to miss it. So if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because we are not stopping throughout this off season. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.